ANSHISM podcast. Today we have got Stephanie Baker. She is a property expert and talks about her experience in the industry and has a lot of advice for people who are looking to invest and things that they need to be careful of. Stephanie will also talk about her own journey and how she carved her way into this world of real estate and talking about her own experiences that I am looking forward to learn from. So, how are you doing, Steph, today? And thank you for taking the time out.
Really good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
How was the drive today? How was the drive to Bulls?
Rainy, wet, windy, typical England.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to learn about what you do at Capital-Elite Ltd, being the director, and specializing in connecting investors with various property types. I need to ask you more about that because I'm very interested in investing. Steph, talk me through your own personal journey. How did you come into the real estate industry and what was your sort of first motivation to start it?
So, without getting into a sob story, I didn't have a very great upbringing, and we didn't have any money, and I remember my mum always saying to me, bricks and mortar, bricks and mortar, bricks and mortar. I also don't believe that by the time that I come to retire, there's such a thing as, having a state pension or, somebody providing money for me for nothing effectively. It wasn't something that I believed. It just didn't sit right with me. So I always think, you should create generational wealth so that, by the time that I am old, I'm not having to work. I've got money and passive income coming in.
What's a typical day or a typical week for you like?
Organised chaos. No, I no 2 days are the same. If I do a week of doing the same thing or being in the same place, I need to get out, I need to do it. But then I think that's how I work best as well. A typical day, I don't think I have a typical day. Every single day is different. But what are my non-negotiables? My non-negotiables are getting up and going to the gym in the morning, eating healthy as much as I can, getting enough sleep. I'm terrible without sleep. If I have less than 8 hours sleep, I'm not nice to be around. So yeah, those are the sort of non-negotiables, and everything that sits in between is, just keep going, just keep plugging away. Even if you feel like, you're going backwards, just break it down. If you feel like what you're doing is overwhelming, just break it down into little bits and maybe just do a little bit today and then do a little bit the next day and move on to something else, something still productive, but don't overwhelm yourself.
I've not mentioned your rent to serviced accommodation business. Talk us through that and tell us how you developed that business.
Yeah, so I invested quite a bit into my education, learning about a lot of the different strategies, and that one at the time seemed to work well for what my goals at the time were. I found that I had a good way of speaking with landlords and getting them on board, making sure that they understood what I was looking to achieve, and making sure that, again, it was a win-win for the landlords. And, every property that I've taken on in bad condition, and, the landlords are so happy with how we keep the properties now. And it's just making sure that the landlords are aware of that and they see the value, and it's got to be, again, like what we were saying before, it's got to be a win-win. But yeah, that was probably when it was the toughest part, trying to do that sort of transition, and there's never enough hours in the day.
You were working for another company, and whilst also in that process you were educating yourself, and you always tell people that be very careful of these online gurus who talk about properties. Although it did help you, but it came at a substantial cost. So talk us through that sort of experience as a naive young person who's trying to build something of their own, and they look up to these online gurus who are, is it fair to say, ripping you off?
Yeah. I think it's a difficult question to answer. There's a lot of different, gurus out there. Some of them are great, some of them are not so great. From my personal experience, and I think I said this before to you, didn't I? Like I can only ever be grateful for what I've done and the steps that I've taken because it's got me to where I am now. But at the same time, should I or be in a position to do it again, or if I was to advise anybody to do it, I wouldn't advise them to do the way that I did. I would say, find somebody that is already doing what you want to do and that is the best in their game, and go and work for them for free. Go and, do whatever you can to be around those type of people as long as you possibly can, because any online course or any in-person course that you do, it does have a lot of its own benefits, but at the same time, there's only so much that they can ever teach you on a course. In life experiences, that you're, if you want to be a deal sourcer, whatever objections you come up against, the minute you come out of doing that course, you're going to get an objection thrown at you that you'll have not heard before, and you won't know how to handle it. So for me, what do they say? 10,000 hours to make a master at anything?
Yeah.
Fully, agree with that, yeah. And I think, immerse yourself in working for somebody that is doing what you want to do.
I absolutely agree with you in the fact that you have to dedicate yourself. So, Steph, before we move on, do you feel that when you started your journey in the real estate market, you had the intention that, okay, working for the biggest company in the Northeast would help me start my own thing, or was it just doing that job at the time?
It was actually, I had a property that I'd been doing a refurb on when I came back to the UK, and I was looking at letting it out and getting it valued by a few different agents, and I had about 5 different agents come out, and the company that I ended up working for was the company that was heads and shoulders above any of the other agents that came out. And yeah, I wanted to work for the best, and I don't know if at that time I knew that I was going to start my own business, and I knew that the way that, obviously, I think it's a very fluid goal, and my goals will always change, but I think at the time, yeah, I wanted to make sure that I worked for the best company that I possibly could, that I felt was the right step for me at that time.
Do you think you can give credit to your mother for putting that in you, or engraving that you need to build something of your own?
Massively. My mum really struggled when I was younger as well, and I think seeing her go through that and seeing what she had to sacrifice and what she did sacrifice, for me, and I think that, seeing how her work ethic, but also seeing where she made mistakes, and also as I've got older, me kind of learning from those mistakes and going, I'm not going to do that.
I'm just going to make my own and learn. Not deliberately, everyone ends up making that because no one teaches you how to be a mother, does it? Or no one teaches you how to be a father.
No, I mean, I'm not a mother yet, but...
I'm not a father yet.
But yeah, absolutely, and, I'm so grateful for all of the experiences. But yeah, my mum, without her, I wouldn't be half the person I am today.
You work closely with people, and a lot of time there are situations when you are explaining people how to get their first house, how to invest, and how patient do you have to be when sometimes the same questions are being asked again and again and again, and that's your job?
I don't mind that at all, because I think, we've all been there and we all need the help, and I will always, look to help anybody as much as I can. What is a real irritating thing for me, and it is a real bugbear, is the people that, you give the help to, but then they want you to go and meet them for coffee, and those ones I'm always, or they want to take you for dinner, or they want to take you for lunch, and I kind of, at that point, I doubt their sincerity as to whether they want, personally, either they just want all of the help for free, they've got ulterior motives, or they just don't have any respect for my time. And that might seem a bit of a weird one. You might be like, well, that's nice, they want to take you for a coffee, or they want to take you for lunch.
I exactly know what you mean.
And actually, no, I think I find that quite disrespectful when they're they're expecting so much of my time, and my time is so precious. You know, if I've spent half an hour on the phone with somebody helping them for nothing, I don't mind doing that. I'll always, you know, make the time to help people, but when they start to disrespect that, I find that quite annoying. Mm-hmm.
What do you feel that men see women a bit less or a bit differently when they're doing business? Have you felt that?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one, because I think for as many doors as it may have closed, I think it's also opened. You know, I think life is a double-edged sword, as when you're in a lot of different situations, you can take a positive and a negative from it. I think on the whole, most men, I think, treat you like anybody else. They respect you for what you bring to the table from a business perspective. You know, if you've got a good deal and the deal stacks and it's good with the numbers, then to me, I don't think, for a lot of investors that I speak to, it doesn't matter whether I'm a man, woman, it's building that connection and that relationship with somebody. And that takes time, you know, to sort of, you know, for them to
build that relationship.
To build that, yeah, absolutely. Has it caused?
Or I would rephrase my question: have you felt that men view women differently in business?
Not as much as what you would think, and I think it's a very popular subject at the moment, isn't it? Female woman empowerment, and I think from my perspective, it's very rare where I've been treated any differently because I'm a woman. Yes, there has been instances, more so from the sort of older generation, but on the whole, I would say 97% of the time, people treat you with respect because of what you bring to the table and the business that you've created.
It's fair to say that you said that people can have ulterior motives when someone's asking you out to come out on dinner, come out on coffee, and all of those things, and it's practically a stranger, and you're helping them to get a property or invest.
I think it depends what the reasoning is, and have they shown me that they're serious in a way. You know, if an investor is, you know, they've bought 2 or 3 deals off me, and you know they're in the area, or they want to go and view something, they want to
looking to expand.
Yeah, then great. It's not a disrespect of my time. You know, they've shown that they're serious, and they're not just messing me around. Those I'm absolutely fine with, but it's the people that just want to take. The people that just want to keep asking you questions, take your time, but without giving anything in return. I think everything in life has got to be a fair exchange, and the minute that it's not a fair exchange is
disrespectful.
Really disrespectful, yeah.
Now, you talked about people asking you loads of questions, and people not being very sure of how to buy, what to buy. What was your first experience of getting a house?
So my first house was a bit of a different way round. So we used to buy horses from like the meat markets for like 250 quid, me and my mum, and because we could never afford sort of the good horses, I would always end up with the bad ones. I would learn how to like fix them, and then so basically we would buy horses from the meat market, and we would, you know, see the potential in them. We would, you know, bring them on, we would fix the problems, and then we would sell the horses on to like lovely family homes and take a profit. And we did that over years and years, and the profits amounted to me being able to get a deposit on my first house. So yeah, and then my mum was going through a breakup, and it was kind of a bit of a bittersweet time. But I got my first house when I was 26. I left the country shortly after, worked abroad, and, you know, sort of built up my portfolio from there.
You know, working with your mother and looking after horses, you definitely would have a connection with animals for sure, I would say.
I think I've always loved horses from whenever I can first remember. But I think everybody in life, I think they have a talent. I think that everybody in life has something that they're really good at. It's just finding it. I was really lucky that was always my passion. Bricks and mortar was always my passion. And horses just kind of, you know, I was besotted. Like, I was that kid that had all the posters on the bedroom, and yeah, it just, every waking minute was always horses. So I think from there, I used to show in Western Rain and Western events, and which is relatively new sport in the UK, but over in Europe and especially America, it's really big. When I sort of got involved with that, things sort of expanded from there, really. But yeah, I think finding your passion is so important.
Did you have that realization that you want something more from life at that time as well, or were you like, I'm happy with what this is bringing?
No, I think I've always wanted, I know a lot of people will probably resonate with this, but like you constantly feel like you want more. I think the minute that you don't have goals and the minute that you don't want for something better, we were talking about this in the elevator, weren't we? Like you've got to, I think when you have that sort of mentality, you know, you're always stepping for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And we were just talking about, like, you know, even me being on this podcast like 2 years ago, I would have like dreamt of, you know, being invited onto a podcast was like, oh my God, what me? And 2 years later, I've really got to sort of pinch myself that I'm even being invited onto things like this. So I think your goals completely change. And it took actually, you know, a couple of weeks ago for me to have to sit down and go, holy shit, Steph, like you're doing really well. But I think it's so easy to get caught up in, you forget what your goals were then because you've surpassed them so much. So 2 years ago, this would have been a dream, but now you get so caught up in it because your goals are so much bigger. I think it's important just to take a bit of a step and just appreciate where you've got to.
Talking about your role, let's come back to property and real estate and your current role. What will you be doing in Manchester now? What's the new role? What's the new company that you're working with?
Yeah, so I'm working in partnership with another company, basically working directly with the developers. And what we do is, there's a lot of other areas as well, but the main focus is supported living. So we work directly with the developers, we do the refurbs on the units or the freeholds. We then get local housing providers and supported living contracts in those units. We get the end users who are predominantly Section 117 of the Mental Health Act, so they're people with, say, Alzheimer's, dementia, schizophrenia, people that need that extra ongoing care. And then what we do is we get the end users in those units, and then we sell those units with the commercial values to investors on like high yields.
Do you think that people need to be very careful when it comes to buying or getting flats or apartments with cladding? And there have been quite a few issues, and if we talk about the Grenfell fire, where a lot of innocent people lost their lives, and the real estate developers or the council did not do their due diligence. They did not actually look after people.
It's the flammable materials that are inside the building, effectively what would have been allowed in previous. Since Grenfell, obviously, they've put measures into place to make sure that these materials are removed and replaced with less flammable.
But there's so many of them still.
There's so many, isn't there? You know, this isn't gonna. It's not a 5 minute. You know, how are you ever going to fix this straight away? You know, it's not an easy answer, is it?
Because all those beautiful tall buildings that have been created, they took time to build.
Well, it's been proven that there is no easy answer. You know, you're never gonna, you know, you appease one party and somebody else is taking the brunt for it. And again, it comes back to this double-edged sword, doesn't it? I know that obviously since then, from the developers' side of things, new procedures and new measures are put into place a lot with the planning stages and the development of new buildings. But again, like I said, like you were saying, it doesn't resolve the issue that there are so many buildings now with these issues that we're all aware of. You know, where does it end?
Steph, what do you think about cladding in general? And, you know, after the Grenfell and after my own personal experience, there was a tragedy in Bolton as well. And luckily, no one got hurt, there were no casualties. Would you say that you personally stay away from cladding and keep an arm's length with it, because it might not be a suitable option for investors when you know there are risks involved, when you know that there are projects that were built before new regulations have been put in place? and to bring those changes would take a lot of time.
I completely agree with you. I think cladding, I think it depends on the individual scenario. If you're an investor and you're getting a great deal for a unit that is, substantially below market, you've got a clear exit strategy of, who's taking responsibility of getting it fixed, and you have an exit strategy and you're happy to leave your cash in something for probably longer than what you may anticipate, then yeah, I think you can potentially come out with a good deal. But I don't think it's something that somebody you're looking for their first property. If they were to ask me for my advice, I would stay clear. Know what you're doing and understand fully exactly what you're getting yourself into.
Steph, what is your advice to young people who are looking to invest, are very skeptical of how to get that deposit, or they're not aware of the schemes, or how easy or difficult it is to get a mortgage? Yeah,
great question. And I think it kind of stems back to what we were talking about earlier, spending time with the people that are doing what you want to do. If you want to be a sourcer, go and work for free for one of the best sources that you can. I think when it comes into purchasing, I think that again ties in, because you're in that environment, you're going to get access to different brokers, different deals, different, properties that are going to come up. And I think everything sort of ties in with what you're looking to do anyway. But probably the best advice that I could give is, educate yourself in every possible way. And I know that it can seem like, and I've made this mistake myself, where you get caught up with the sort of shiny penny syndrome, oh, I'm going to do a buy-to-let, oh no, I'm going to do buy refurbs, oh, I'm going to do a buy-to-serviced accommodation, I'm going to do a HMO. And I think it's so easy to kind of end up hopping from one strategy to another. So I think it's making sure that once you've done your due diligence and once you've picked a strategy, stick with it, rather than bobbing about.
Would you say that have the will to ask that silly question and have the will to just be able to trust your process, because you won't be able to build a portfolio in a day?
Yeah, do you know what? That's so true. Like, yeah, absolutely. Have the patience, because I can be quite impatient and it's definitely not helped me. Go with your gut. Every good decision that I've ever made has been going from my gut, which sounds so stupid. Like, you make some huge decisions and I'm just like, okay, yeah, it feels right. And I've also turned down some amazing opportunities that on paper sounded incredible because my gut just said no. So yeah, what was the other question?
I was just asking that, would you just say to people that don't be afraid of asking the silly questions? Just keep asking the silly questions, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I went through a stage, and especially when I first started my own business, where I felt like I couldn't ask the right questions to anybody because I felt like I should already know. And the minute that I kind of dropped that, sometimes actually the questions that you think are silly are actually really valid questions that you feel a bit silly for asking at the time, but actually maybe somebody else hasn't thought of that very simple thing as well.
True.
So never be afraid to ask a silly question. There's no such thing as a silly question.
Financing properties and working with investors can be quite exhausting, and getting those deals right. And how many times is the case when you're working hard on a deal, you have been in touch with the investors for several months now, and in the end they pull out and they're like, okay, we don't want to do this, and they have taken your time, their resources, viewing the property, you're traveling, you're having meetings, you're being patient, you're showing them options. How frustrating is that?
Well, my contract basically states that they have to put a certain, depending what the deal is, if I'm talking like a multi-million-pound deal, the negotiation on it is going to be slightly different to doing a 50,000-60,000 buy-to-let. But depending what the deal is, I normally take a fee up front, a percentage, or the full fee. And from that point on, they've got a certain amount of time to carry out their own due diligence. If the buyer was then to pull out for any reason after that, then, that's, I've done my part. It's a bit like, you wouldn't go to a solicitor and get them to do the work and then pull out and not have to pay for their time. That's a good thing about having a contract, and I always get a contract signed, is making sure that everything is in black and white. There can't be any
Grey areas.
grey areas. Yeah.
In the current day and age, in the scenario where there's a digital world and social media and people are busy showing off and maxing out their credit limits and credit cards, how difficult can it be for young investors to secure a deposit? And do you have any advice for people who are burning out their credit limits, who are burning out their cash in just presenting a lifestyle that is not very real and it's just for a social media facade?
I would rather have 100,000 worth of assets invested into property than 100,000 in a car that's just going to depreciate. That at the end of the day, the car gets you from A to B, and like, yes, it's not nice to have a nice car and stuff, but you've got nothing in the long run. So yeah, I think discipline as well is, it's difficult when all your friends are going out and all your friends are, driving nice cars and you do feel sometimes like you're missing out. But I think you've got to prioritise what do you want, and if that's all you want in life is to go out on a Friday, Saturday night and have a great time, then great, happy for you. But if you want more from life, you need to be more disciplined, and it's going to be easier the younger you are to get that discipline in place and make sure that it follows through, because once you've got those assets, you're set.
Sometimes those are bad financial decisions that have repercussions and you have to pay for them at a higher interest rate. Mm-hmm. Rather than that, you can get a mortgage and get a house and get a roof, as your mother said, build something of your own, bricks and mortar. Is that what?
Yeah. I don't know why, but bricks and mortar was always the bit that stuck.
No, definitely. So yeah. Now, property regulations and laws can be complex. How important is it for young people, and how young investors can seek legal advice before they buy a property, and what is the due diligence that they can do?
So a good broker should be able to give you really good advice on that. If you're in any doubt, speak to a solicitor. But make sure you're speaking to, a well-trusted broker, a well-trusted mortgage advisor, making sure that the people that you're speaking to are really well-trusted within their industry. But yeah, I would always go to the professional in their field. If you want a property really well painted, you don't get your plumber to do the painting. Same way as you don't get your sparky to do, the plumbing. Horses for courses, and speak to the right people.
Steph, during your time as an auction specialist, there are sometimes we see properties online which are very cheap, say for 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, and also on the website you see that you can't go and view the property because the owner won't like it. So how people who are looking to invest and see auction as a good option, which is a great option if you ask me personally, what was your mindset first of all when you were an auction specialist, and as a customer who's buying and investing in an auction property, what are the things that they can keep in mind and be careful of?
Firstly, I love auctions. I think the system in the UK for purchasing a property, to me, is very flawed, with the one main issue being that anyone can put an offer in on a property, and one day before exchange they can pull out with no consequences. And I think that that's wrong on so many levels. And that's where I think auction is great. Firstly, because you pay down a non-refundable res fee and a deposit, so you have to be sure you're given all the information up front in the form of a legal pack. You can do all of that due diligence before you put your offer in, but it means that the vendor's got security and you've got security that the property isn't going to be taken away from you. The vendor's not going to accept a higher offer, and the vendor's got that security that they know that the sale is going through. Auctions, I think, as well, are a really good opportunity for you to see exactly where the property market is sitting, because you will always get a true value, more or less, in an auction as to what a property is worth. Anybody can sell a property on a residential sale and they can charge whatever they want for it, but what does it go through at? And auctions, I think, are a very good indicator of where the market's sitting.
Definitely, and as you said, rightly so, there are the auction pack and the legal pack that you have to go through, and there is a deposit that you have to put in.
That's
What can be the reason for that? Why do companies take so much time to process to return payments? Because you have been a specialist, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you have faced a similar situation in your company or not.
So, I mean, I can't speak for all companies. The company I worked for was great, and we had a fall-through rate of less than 1%. It is very rare that you get those instances purely because everything has to be in that legal pack. So you've got your land registry, title deed, search, special conditions. Everything is already in that legal pack for you. Now, I would never recommend for you to put any offer on any property without having your own solicitor look through that legal pack first. They will know what's missing, what is potentially going to be a downside to you purchasing that property. So once you've exchanged, or if it's a conditional and you've got 28 days to exchange, always make sure that you've got your solicitor to look through that legal pack. But on the back end of that, fees shouldn't. It's very rare that normally fees would be held because, especially from the company I work for, you've already exchanged. So I don't know. I can't answer for every company, but I know it was very, very rare for the company I work for.
What are the emerging trends that young people need to be aware of in the market? Like, if someone wants to build their portfolio, is there a particular type of property they should start investing in, or they should go with the cheapest?
I think it comes down to your education, but I think it's very easy, especially with all the avenues in education out there at the moment. I think it's very easy for people to think, my first property is going to be a HMO because I can get so much profit on that. But actually, if you haven't started with a buy-to-let, what makes you think that you can manage a HMO? And I'm a great believer in you start at the bottom and you work your way up. You start with a buy-to-let, you get a couple of buy-to-lets, and then you do your simple refurbs. Then from your refurbs, you can move on to some of the more extravagant strategies.
And refurb work isn't easy, Steph.
No.
You have to get so many things in. The pipes might be not working. People don't understand that if you're buying a property for 40,000, it might have had issues for at least 20,000.
Yeah, you're completely right, and it's making sure that they all sync in an order. Like I had a problem where I had to get the electrician to come back in after the plaster had just been finished, and I was like, so it's the last thing that you want to have to do. So yeah, it's making sure that you know the order of how things are going to happen, and making sure that you've got all that booked in before you complete. Because if you wait until you complete, depending on how you're looking at financing this and also what your exit strategy is. So like for me personally, if I'm using investors finance, I want to make sure that that investor is paid back as soon as possible. So if I'm doing a rip out, I want the rip out to be starting the day I've got the keys. So everybody is always booked in to make sure that that refurb is completed within 6 to 8 weeks. And I can be starting either the remortgage process or then flipping it on. So yeah, make sure that you've got everybody in order.
In real estate, how important is it to have mentors, and how important is it to have people who can guide you?
I think as you grow and as you sort of build your businesses and your brand, you become not a different person, but you're growing all the time, and sometimes other people around you aren't quite on that same level of growth. You'll make new friends and new people around you that for instance, I've got some property friends that are really, really close friends now, and it's great because I met one of my friends the other night, and we'll just sit and talk about property for hours, and just bouncing ideas off. And 5 years ago, those sort of conversations I wouldn't really have been able to relate as much to, and 10 years before that I wouldn't have had a clue. Surrounding yourself with, I never want to be the smartest person in the room. Surround yourself with people where you feel the least smart person, people that you can learn and grow from. But with regards to mentors, I think it's always really important to have people that inspire you, people that you spend your time around, that you can pick up lots of information from. So yeah, definitely.
Who's your mentor, or who's your go-to person?
Do you know what? I think I've got a few different ones. There's people within property that are doing amazing things. If I was to look into property, there's people like Jordan Peterson, from business perspective, Grant Cardone. You know, and there's also friends and a lot of different people a lot closer to home, you know, doing property around me, and you know, we're doing a similar thing, and you know, I think you can take something from absolutely everybody that you meet, you know, even people that you don't like.
I really appreciate your insight. For someone who is probably not so young, but they feel that they have been a failure in their life and they have not been able to build anything for themselves and not have had the opportunity, what would your advice be? That okay, you can start off by doing this thing?
Work harder, because I think when you think you're working hard enough, work harder. And I think it's too easy, especially in this day and age, to assign the blame to somebody else. You know, I didn't get anywhere because, you know, the government didn't help me out, or, you know, I didn't get this job, or get on with it. And when you get sat down, when you're watching a series on TV and you think, oh, well, I've had a hard day, work harder. And I think that is probably the best thing that I can suggest to anybody. When you feel like you've done enough, do more.
Are there any common pitfalls that young people or investors of any age should be aware of, and how can they mitigate these risks whilst investing or whilst getting a new property?
Run it on the numbers. If the numbers don't work, don't try and stick it out. But make sure that you do your due diligence on whatever you know you're looking to do. Speak to the professionals, you know, solicitors, you know, make sure, especially things like leaseholds have got quite a few, you know, issues with, say, the length of the lease, you know, the cladding, you know, freeholders, stuff like that. You know, your solicitor, you're paying them a lot of money. Listen to what they're telling you. So that would be the biggest thing I can advise anybody, is just make sure that you do your due diligence and you know what you're talking about.
I agree with you, Steph, and there was a point that you talked about and I found it very interesting, that when you were having now the conversations that you have with people at this point of your life are about growth, property, conversations that are more meaningful, that bring more value to you and help you grow. Mm-hmm. Would you feel that on the way to building your real estate portfolio, being in the industry, did you lose a lot of good friends?
Yeah, I don't really like hearing people talk negative about anybody. I think it's not a nice...
Red flag.
Massively, yeah. If I hear somebody that is, especially somebody that I don't know very well, if I hear them bitching about someone else or slagging somebody else off, instantly I'm like, I don't want to hear it, because if they're doing that about somebody else, I have no doubt, yeah, that they're going to be doing the same thing about me. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you know, I keep your friends close, and you know what's the saying. But I actually think I've been very, very lucky in a sense of my friendship group have always been very, very supportive of me, of what I'm doing.
That is rare, and you're very lucky.
Very rare, yeah. Yes, I've lost friends, but the true friends have always been extremely supportive.